One of our core values at St. Michael's University School is respect. With this in mind, we acknowledge that our school rests on the hearts of Straight Salish territory, a living culture with its own rites, ceremonies, and unfolding history. We honor the Esquimalt, Songhees, and Wasanich peoples, whose homelands we share and whom we recognize as our neighbors.
Hi everyone, my name is Tina, and welcome you guys to our first Smooth Talks event this year. Smooth Talks is a student-led club allowing individuals to gather and inspire each other through speeches and expression. The theme for tonight is the unknown.
My name is Marlene, and tonight we will be your MCs. We're so glad to welcome 3 student speakers, 1 musical performance, and 1 guest speaker to the stage tonight.
First, let's give it up for Beatrice.
Hello, my name is Beatrice Sharp. I will be performing a speech today about the unknown. I fear uncertainty, the unknown. I get anxious because I don't know what to expect or how to react. How will the test go? I'm not sure. I could either pass or fail. Will I get the job? I don't know that either. I could either get hired or rejected. Do they like me back? I can't tell. Perhaps they like someone else. As human beings, uncertainty keeps us in the dark. When delving into the unknown, our minds sharpen and our curiosity peaks. It makes us tense and scared of the future, beginning to anticipate the many outcomes. We fear the unknown. Chase it away by studying for the test, forming connections for the job, and analyzing everything the person we admire says. We calm our thoughts, believing we can control the outcomes, slanting the odds in our favor. You've probably done this before. We all do it since it helps us avoid negative emotions. But in a world with so many variables, is it worth the additional effort to try to control them? By avoiding all other outcomes, could we potentially ignore better ones? And finally, why is the unknown such a scary thing? And could it be bliss? Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you the answers to these questions and hopefully make you more aware of when you're avoiding our age-old enemy, the unknown. I want you to think, could ignorance, often viewed negatively, be, in fact, bliss? First, what is the unknown and why do we hate it so much? The fear of the unknown is the oldest of any fear. It was fundamental in our evolution, creating the people we are today. Whether it was 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia or last Tuesday, we react to variables the same. We plan accordingly. We socialize from a young age to get better perspectives, lowering the number of variables. While this has been great for the evolution of creative thinking, it also sets us up for failure, especially now. In the modern world, variables and possibilities are impossible to process. For example, take technology. Think, as early as 300 years ago, today's technology was the unknown. Thoughts could only travel in the local neighborhood where everyone shared the same beliefs. Now, when you said something, it was likely that another person would agree with you. Now, advanced technology, namely phones and computers, have become a routine part of everyday life. In the modern age, nobody shares the same views because they are all influenced by different things we see in the media. When sharing thoughts, we have no idea how other people will respond. These extraordinarily high levels of the unknown are against our genuine being. Under normal circumstances, you would gather information and create a plan to form a solution. However, the world we live in is far from ordinary. When things don't make sense, running awry from our original plan, we feel a deep sense of imbalance. Second, how does uncertainty feel? We're hardwired to avoid the unknown because it makes us feel negative emotions. The vast majority of people are experiencing some kind of emotional distress or unpleasant emotions during this time. However, not many people know that some of these emotions come from uncertainty. Kevin Anschel, a clinical psychologist, says fear and anxiety run hand in hand. The more things are uncertain, the more we are going to fear. And the more we fear, the more we are anxious. For example, 2 weeks back, I went to Vancouver alone for the first time, completely independent. Since it was a long weekend, I decided it was an opportunity to see my old friend. So that Saturday morning, I went to the bus stop. I waited anxiously for the 70. Earlier, I had been excellent, but as the scheduled bus time came and went, my stomach twisted into knots. I was uncertain, directly facing the unknown. All my hope was lying in a single bus to arrive. If it didn't come, I wouldn't be able to go at all. I was so nervous, I couldn't stop moving. The 5 minutes before the 70 finally arrived stretched into what felt like hours. It was painful, almost. After I got on the bus, I felt a little better. I take the bus every morning to school, but for some reason this ride felt foreign. So I distracted myself from my thoughts by reading. Another way the unknown makes us feel. The unfamiliar equates to fear, and when we fear things, it triggers the amygdala, the emotional center of the brain's fight or flight response. In this case, since I couldn't fight uncertainty by limiting the variables, I chose to flee them by distracting myself. Just as you would a scary monster or a mother when she sees your dirty room. The rest of the bus ride and journey went smoothly. However, it reminded me that nobody escapes uncertainty, despite how much we fight or avoid it. It is rooted in our existence. Nobody knows everything, and nobody ever will. Socrates' famous statement, "I only know one thing, that I know nothing," introduces ignorance as a form of wisdom. Wisdom can also be rooted in acknowledging what one does not know. This brings me to my key takeaway for this evening. Sometimes not knowing and accepting you are in the unknown can be a good thing, the best thing. Humans were not designed to learn and understand everything. If we did, there would be no learning. We couldn't experience surprise parties, and adventuring would lose its purpose. If we were never in the dark, could there be any light in the first place? If there were no uncertainty, would there be a point to living? We were not built to know everything. We were made to comprehend just enough to piece things together. Piece things together in creative ways to form wonderfully intricate pieces of art. Connect ideas to solve the answers of the universe. Establish bonds between people we care for. What I'm trying to say is, despite endlessly trying to avoid the unknown, being in the dark, at least some of the time, allows us to get thrills when we learn a new concept, feel appreciated by the people who throw parties for you, and study in awe the beauty of the world. If we are never in the dark, we could never feel the light of knowledge. Without uncertainty, life loses its meaning. So whenever you feel uncertain, be it before a test or asking someone out on a date, know it is fully normal. Appreciate that nobody knows everything. Helping people understand offers them glimpses into the light that brightens their day. And finally, remember that the unknown isn't always a bad thing. Embracing the unknown, not chasing it or hiding from it, can make life more exciting. It is what makes us human. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. What a way to start a show.
Next up, we will have Elena, who will be reciting a poem by Robert Service titled Lost.
Have you ever feared the unknown? Of course you have. Everybody has, to some degree. Should it be waiting for your result on a math test, or being scared of the dark, or getting lost. Being lost in the unknown. Few, however, are driven to the point of insanity by these, like the young man in the poem I'm about to recite. He's fighting for his life, and he can't even tell what's real.
Black is the sky, but the land is white. Oh, the wind, the snow, and the storm. Father, where is our boy tonight? Pray to God he is safe and warm. Mother, mother, why should you fear? Safe is he, and the Arctic moon over his cabin shines so clear. Rest and sleep, 'twill be morning soon. Say, it's getting dark awful sudden. Well, this is mighty queer. Where in the world have I got to? It's still and black as a tomb. I reckoned the camp was yonder. I figured the trail was here. Nothing, just draw and valley packed with quiet and gloom. Snow that comes down like feathers, thick and gauby and gray. Night that looks spiteful ugly. Why, it seems that I've lost my way. The cold's got an edge like a jackknife. It must be 40 below. Leastways, that's what it seems like. It cuts so fierce to the bone. The wind is getting real ferocious. It's heaving and whirling the snow. It shrieks with a howl of fury. It dies away to a moan. Its arms swing round like a banshee's, swift and icily white. And buffet and blind and beat me. Oh Lord, it's a hell of a night. I'm all tangled up in a blizzard. There's only one thing to do. Keep on moving and moving. It's death if I rest. Oh God, if I see the morning, if only I struggle through, I will say the prayers I've forgotten since I lay upon my mother's breast. I seem going round in a circle. Maybe the camp is near. Say, did somebody holler? Was it a light I saw? Or was it only a notion? I'll shout, and maybe they'll hear. No, the wind only drowns me. Shout till my throat is raw. The boys are all around the campfire, wondering when I'll be back. They'll soon be starting to seek me. They'll scarcely wait for the light. What will they find, I wonder, when they come to the end of my track? A hand stuck out of a snowdrift, frozen and stiff and white. That's what they'll strike, I reckon. That's how they'll find their pard. A pie-faced corpse in a snowbank. Oh, curse you! Don't be a fool. Play the game to the finish. Bet on your very last card. Nerve yourself for the struggle. Oh, you coward, keep cool. I'm going to lick this blizzard. I'm going to live the night. It can't down me with its bluster. I'm not the kind to be beat. On hands and knees will I bucket. With every breath will I fight. It's life that I fight for, and never it seemed so sweet. I know that my face is frozen. My hands are numb-like and dead. But oh, my feet keep a-moving, heavy and hard and slow. They're trying to kill me, the night that's black overhead, the wind that cuts like a razor, the whipcord lash of the snow. Keep a-moving, don't stumble, you fool. Curse this snow that's a-piling of purpose to block my way. It's heavy as gold in the rocker. It's white and fleecy as wool. It's soft as a bed of feathers. It's warm as a stack of hay. Curse on my feet that slip so, my poor, tired, stumbling feet. I guess they're a job for the surgeon. They feel so queer-like to lift. I'll rest them for just a moment. Oh, but to rest is sweet. The awful wind cannot get me deep, deep down in the drift. Father, Father, a bitter cry I heard out of the night so dark and wild. Why is my heart so strangely stirred? 'Twas like the voice of our erring child. Mother, mother, you only heard a waterfowl in the locked lagoon. Out of the night, a wounded bird. Rest and sleep, 'twill be morning soon. Who is it talks of sleeping? I'll swear that somebody shook me hard by the arm for a moment. But how on earth could it be? See how my feet are moving? Awfully funny they look, moving as if they belonged to a someone that wasn't me. The wind down the night's long alley bowls me down like a pin. I stagger and fall and stagger, crawl arm deep in the snow. Beaten back to my corner, how can I hope to win? And there's the blizzard, waiting to give me the knockout blow. Oh, I'm so warm and sleepy. No more hunger and pain. Just to rest for a moment. Was ever rest such a joy? What was that? I'll swear it. Somebody shook me again. Somebody seemed to whisper, "Fight to the last, my boy." Fight! That's right, I must struggle. I know that to rest means death. Death? But then what does death mean? Ease from a world of strife. Life has been none too pleasant, and yet, with my failing breath, still and still must I struggle, fight for the gift of life. Seems that I must be dreaming. Here is the old home trail. Yonder, a light is gleaming. Oh, I know it so well. The air is scented with clover. The cattle wait by the rail. Father is through with the milking. There goes the supper bell. Mother, your boy is crying, out in the night and cold. Let me in and forgive me. I'll never be bad anymore. I'm oh so sick and so sorry. Please, dear mother, don't scold. It's just your boy, and he wants you, mother. Open the door. Father, father, I saw a face pressed just now to the window pane. Oh, it gazed for a moment's space, wild and wan, and was gone again. Mother, mother, you only saw the snow drifted down from the maple tree. Oh, the wind that is sobbing so, weary and worn and old are we. Just the snow and a wounded loon. Rest and sleep. 'Twill be morning soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena, for sharing that wonderful poem with us.
Now please enjoy a musical performance by Jessie.
Thank you, Jesse, for your performance. We will now be moving into the second half of tonight's event. I will be taking over the remainder of Tina's announcements, and with that, I would like to welcome our final guest student speaker to the stage, Stephen.
Hey people, wow, this is a lot of people today. I'm really nervous, you know. Yeah, that was a really good performance from a person who played the violin. That was actually really good. And props to, you know, Beatrice and Elena. That was a really good poem and that was a really good speech. So my speech today is talking about, you know, trying new things. And has anyone ever, when they decided to do an activity, they became like really anxious and their hands started shaking up and they became like really nervous, you know? Probably a lot of you have felt that feeling in your life at least once. And you know, I had a friend back in my old school. Let's call him Jeffrey. He was an athletic man and he was a runner. He loved running, but he was scared of running in front of people. And this one time in middle school, we were doing a race. And even though he was so good at running, he threw up before the race. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine throwing up before the race just because you're so anxious? And so I had to get me and my friends to cheer him on. And Jeffrey was like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this at all. But we kept on asking him to just try. And that's one of the main things I want you all to do, which is just try. Being there is already winning half of the battle. And in the end, Jeffrey ran. And he was so good at the marathon, he decided, he wanted to try running again and again. And now he's playing in the provincials team for Indonesia. Trying new things can seem maybe a little bit difficult, you know? For the speakers here, you know, the MCs, it might seem a little nerve-wracking. And it is, because you're expected to perform in front of people. I mean, who doesn't feel that? Who doesn't feel that emotion? But look, just ignore everything and do what you want to do. Because that's how you try new things. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Finally, we would like to welcome Mr. Jackson onto the stage, our guest speaker. Mr. Jackson is a retired head of sciences at SMUS. He is an ocean garbage collector and an avid kayaker. He has profound knowledge on the Galapagos and is an Antarctic explorer. Now let's hand the mic over to Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Marlene. So, a couple of weeks ago, I came on campus for the first time in several years, I think, really. I guess I came on for one of the alumni weekends, and then for Remembrance Day, I came on and actually spent some time on campus. So I got chatting with Mr. Geddes, and I mentioned that I'd been in Antarctica and would be happy to come and talk a little bit about that to people at SMO. And he said, we've got this thing happening, SMOOS Talks. So that's how I got to come here this evening. And the theme that I was told was the unknown. So how could I connect the unknown to Antarctica? Well, it turns out that the original name of Antarctica was Terra Australis Incognita, which translated from the Latin means the unknown land of the south. And the key idea here is that the Greeks, 2,000 years ago or more, basically propounded this idea that there had to be a land to the south to counterbalance of its land to the north. And so they proposed Terra Australis Incognita. And referring to this southern land, the Greeks, and Aristotle in particular, basically we had already decided, or people had already decided, that the land to the north was the Arctic, named after Arctos, the bear, and so it was the land of the constellation, the Great Bear. So what did they decide to name that land to the south? Antarcticos. So the Arctic and the Antarctic. So the Antarctic gets its name simply by being the opposite of the Arctic. And I wanted to show you a few maps that were made in the late 1500s, between 1570 and 1580. And these maps show this enormous land to the south, Terra Australis Incognita. This was basically a land that they had no idea what was there. It was just an idea. Other maps, you can see this is also from the late 1500s, kind of similar to some parts of our modern globe, but still some big bits missing. And what you might notice is that the southern land is becoming less and less unknown. And how many of you have heard of Mercator? Mercator is the person whose map projection we use on pretty much all world maps. And so this map from the late 1500s shows a large white mass to the south. And it shows you that basically until the late 1500s, we had absolutely no idea what was down there. So when did we start finding out a little bit more about it? And now, when we look at Antarctica, we actually know a lot about it. And I guess I should mention that I have just got back from Antarctica. I was there 3 weeks ago, and I'm heading back there this weekend. I now having retired from teaching at SMU, I work pretty much full-time guiding down in Antarctica. So who owns Antarctica? Well, all of these countries think they own Antarctica. And what you'll notice is that there's a lot of overlapping claims from Norway, from the UK, Argentina, Chile, New Zealand, France, Australia. All these countries have claims to Antarctica. However, right now, nobody owns Antarctica. So it's kind of neat that Antarctica is this place with no government. It's not a country, it's a continent, and it is governed by a treaty. So it's governed by the Antarctic Treaty, and this Antarctic Treaty has basically put all these claims on hold and has preserved Antarctica for peace and for science, which I think is pretty cool. So, and while the treaty is in place, only science, tourism, and peaceful activities can happen in Antarctica. So a little bit of some timelines. So I said that those maps were shown from the late 1500s. By the middle 1600s, Abel Tasman, what was named by him, or after what place was named after Abel Tasman? Tasmania, exactly. And he showed that Australia was not part of this Terra Australis Incognita. Captain Cook narrowly missed discovering the Antarctic in 1773. He did discover South Georgia, which is close to the Antarctic and is considered kind of one of the subantarctic islands. And that was 1773. So even in the 1770s, and even until the early 1800s, nobody had experienced or discovered Antarctica. And it wasn't until the 1820s that the first people sighted Antarctica. And it turns out that 3 different groups all sighted Antarctica for the first time in the 1820s. There were some Russians, some Brits, and some Americans. So moving on a little bit further, the search or the goal of reaching the South Pole. And many of you may have heard of Roald Amundsen, who first made it to the South Pole in 1911, and Captain Scott, who also made it to the South Pole a few weeks later. He and his two co-explorers there died on the way back. But one of the things that they did is that they brought back fossils. And they brought back fossils showing that Antarctica had been connected to other continents. And so this exploration of the unknown in part led to our understanding of what we now know to be plate tectonics, which is probably one of the most important theories, I would say, in science now. So nowadays we have satellites that are cruising around the globe day in, day out, and tell us so much about all over the globe, but particularly Antarctica. And another thing about Antarctica and studying Antarctica is that we've learned from the ice cores so much about the world's climate. The ice, when the ice forms in the Antarctic, it traps gas bubbles, and those gas bubbles essentially hold a record of past carbon dioxide concentrations, but also past climate, and has given us basically an 800,000 year history of the world's climate. So going from this incredibly unknown place to now a pretty well-known place. Still, the central part of Antarctica is largely unknown, but Antarctica is giving us lots of knowledge. And just to give you an idea of the scale or the size of Antarctica, it's actually pretty big. So you can see it laid over North America, or the Americas there, North America, for scale. And the little tiny tip at the top is where I work in the Antarctic Peninsula, which is basically just outside the Antarctic Circle. It is a huge, huge area, and they consider that Antarctica is like the driest, highest, coldest part of the world. So why is Antarctica so different from everywhere else in the world? You notice there that the one thing that stands out, it's all ice. And it turns out that that ice started to form about 20 or 30 million years ago when Antarctica separated from the other continents. Antarctica used to be joined to South America, to Africa, to Australia, to India, and all of those areas were connected. But once Antarctica became separate, this global current, basically the Antarctic current, formed that isolated Antarctica and caused the climate to become very, very cold. So it is this icebound continent. And so what would it look like with no ice? How would we figure out what it looks like without ice? And it turns out satellites have given us information. And this is what Antarctica looks like without ice. There's a big mountain chain going down the middle, the Transantarctic mountains, and the peninsula off to the left there, West Antarctica, East Antarctica, and that gives you an idea that underneath all of that ice, I'll go back, oops, is this topography. So, this is me. When I was teaching here, one of the subjects I taught was geology, and this happens to be my favorite rock. It's a very nice piece of rock. If any of you know geology, this is a piece of gneiss. And I wanted to just share with you just a few pictures from Antarctica. And these actually, all these pictures that I'm showing you here came from the trip that I just came back from. So just a few examples. I've now been to Antarctica. I think I've done about 20 trips down there now. And it's an amazing place. So what dominates Antarctica? Ice. And there's so much ice and so much to say about ice and the stories that it tells. But the other thing that everybody associates Antarctica with is penguins. And Here you can see a group of Gentoo penguins, and when I was down there in early November, the penguins were just coming back to Antarctica because November in Antarctica is what season? If it's fall for us, it's spring down there. So it's the very beginning of spring. So it's the beginning of the breeding season in Antarctica. And so I'm going to be heading back down there, I say next week, or actually this weekend, and I will be there until January, so I'll be there basically through a big part of their summer. And the penguins are just so special. There's thousands of them, actually millions of them all around. These are Gentoo penguins. And they have to endure some pretty tough conditions. This is a chinstrap penguin enjoying a blizzard. I guess I was enjoying the blizzard when I took the picture, but it's pretty wild down there, and the weather is, even at the best of times, challenging. And you can see here during that same blizzard, half the penguins basically were kind of lying low, trying to avoid getting too cold. But in another part of Antarctica, this is only a few days later, it seems like we have bright sunshine and an amazing day. These are Adelie penguins. Actually, you can see the ship that I work on in the background there. That's the National Geographic Explorer. And I don't know if you can see, there's a couple of penguins in that picture. Roughly 10,000, I think, on that particular nesting site, or the colony. The biggest colony of this kind of penguin, the Adelie penguin, which is found about 50 miles or 50 kilometers north of here in the Danger Islands, has roughly 750,000 penguins. Yes? Do you ever get run over by penguins? Fortunately not, because we're actually not allowed to approach penguins closer than 5 meters. And if they approach us, we're actually supposed to back away. We're supposed to back away. But penguins have highways. They like to follow the same route day in, day out. Now this is my daughter, Claire. She worked here, or she went to SMU here from kindergarten to grade 12. She graduated in 2010, I think. But she also worked here as the science lab technician until 2020, I guess the beginning of 2020 when stuff happened. But anyway, she came on this trip with me, and you can see she's loving it. And of course I loved having her there. And at this point I just thought I would ask if there was any questions about Antarctica. Yes?
If all the ice did melt and we did see the terrain that was pictured, would it be covered by water?
So the question was, if all the ice melted and we were to see that terrain, would that terrain be covered by water? Well, it turns out that about half of it. I do have another map on another presentation that I could show you, which would show you the sea level. And obviously the mountains that were in the middle, those would be above sea level, but a lot of the other areas, several parts of Antarctica are actually below sea level. And the other thing that would happen is that with the melting ice, if all of Antarctica would melt, that would result in about a 65-meter increase in sea level. So it's almost 200 feet. It's a pretty big change.
What size would Antarctica have been at the maximum glacial extent?
So at its maximum glacial extent, I'm just going to see if I can go back a few to a map here. Yeah, it's a little hard to show, but basically the solid ice, the land. So Antarctica has two main kinds of ice: land ice and sea ice. And so the land ice is the ice that you're seeing in this picture. The sea ice is where the ocean freezes every winter. And actually, when the ocean freezes in the winter in Antarctica, it literally doubles the area of Antarctica. So I don't have any pictures with me right now, but it does actually double the size. But during the peak of the ice ages, the ice did go further offshore, but it didn't increase Antarctica as much as the sea ice does, if that makes sense. It did get out to, this isn't a pointer, is it? No, it probably isn't. There's some small islands called the South Shetlands that you can see off the peninsula, and the ice did go out that far.
There's no notable version of, say, the Argentinian.
No, well, so the mountains in Chile and Argentina were glaciated and still have some pretty significant glaciers, but those glaciers are themselves also receding dramatically. So, yeah. But anyway, Antarctica is a truly amazing place. It's pretty difficult to get to. You have to sail across. You can see the narrowest section there. It's called the Drake Passage, named after Sir Francis Drake. And it takes about 2 days, a day and a half if you're lucky, and has some of the roughest water in the world. When we were coming back this last trip, we had waves that were up to 9 meters in height, which means that they would be a little bit taller than this building. So because the winds can blow all the way around, there's nothing to stop them. So they can get really, really big, and there's a lot of storms in Antarctica. Anyway. Any more questions? All right, well, thank you very much. Oh, so do I. Yeah, the penguins in Antarctica are incredible. There are 3 main kinds of penguins that you see in Antarctica, the gentoo, the chinstrap, and the Adelis. But there's also the emperor penguin, and on this last trip we did get to see emperor penguins, which was pretty cool. And I've seen them maybe 4 or 5 times out of 20 plus trips to Antarctica, and they're amazing. So,
do they have any predators?
Do they have any predators? Yes. So the main predators for penguins are leopard seals. There's a very large seal which is quite a vicious one. I've actually encountered it. It attacks zodiacs sometimes and punctures them. But they will chase and devour penguins. And also there's 5 different groups of killer whales that operate in the Antarctic. Kind of like we have 3 different groups on the BC coast. We have are you familiar with the residents, the transients, and the offshores? Anyway, we have 3 major groups, but in Antarctica they have 5 groups, and one of the groups in Antarctica are penguin specialists. So I would say, yeah, killer whales and leopard seals are.
So there are no land mammals?
No land mammals. However, there are some birds. There's a bird called the skua, which is basically a badass gull that will take chicks. It won't take an adult, but it can take a chick from the nest, and they get quite clever at distracting the parent on the nest, and they'll work in pairs and take the chicks. And also there's a thing called the giant petrel, which is also capable of attacking and killing penguins. But there's very little that can attack a penguin on land, which is why Antarctica is able to have these incredible colonies of penguins. If there were polar bears there, you would not have penguins, despite the cartoons. So. All right. Okay. Thanks over to Marlene.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge on the Arctic with us. I can say that I definitely learned a bunch, and that one picture with all of the penguins in it, that was pretty crazy how many there were. I'm going to hand it over to the heads of Smooth Talk now.
Hi everyone, I'm one of the heads of Smooth Talks along with Karina, who's behind the camera, and Steven, who couldn't make it tonight. I'd like to thank everyone who helped out with the event. Thank you to our MCs and our graphic designers and our lighting and camera management and our teacher sponsor, Mr. Geddes, who is sitting in the back over there. I'd also like to thank our student speakers and performers for their participation. And finally, I'd like to call up Mr. Jackson once again. We've prepared a little gift for you as a thank you for getting the speech together in such a short amount of time.
Thank you so much.
So this concludes tonight's event. Thank you for coming out to listen. On another note, club members, any event organizers, please stay behind afterwards for a club photo. And this whole entire event has been recorded and it will be posted onto our club YouTube channel. So if you'd like to rewind and revisit any of the speeches, feel free to do that. Thank you for coming.